Welcome back. It's me once again, and now I'm interviewing Mrs. Nado to talk about politics in 6th grade. As always, you can watch the full interview on YouTube, and I highly recommend that. But if you're not watching the full interview, this TV interview starts right now. So Mrs. Nado, let's talk about an issue that is important to most, and that is learning about world news. Why do you encourage students to do that?
Well, Jake, I'm glad you asked that question. I teach world geography, and one of the things I find most important is that students take away from it learning about their world and what's going on and how it affects them.
Can fake news come up during this?
Yes, it can. Students are always encouraged to make sure that we look at the sources and see where the facts come from, to make sure they're looking at the facts and not just emotions of somebody on a story.
Are there any specific tips you give them to find fake news?
Any specific tips? Just really to look back and see what was the source of the story, where did it come from, and just to make sure everything in that has facts and is accurate. I always try to explain to students that it's really important for them to know both sides of an issue. So not only the facts of a story, but often there's stories and there's two sides to it. And students should be able to understand both sides to get a full idea of what the event is.
Okay, thank you. We talk about some of the events here that Washington has got involved in with Ukraine, with Iraq, with China, trade war. How do you link that to your general curriculum?
Well, we study the world and all of its people and culture and places. It has a direct connection because I want students to apply it to everyday life. Not just from books, but why are we learning about these places? How are they important to our lives? So we talked about the Ukraine when Russia came in and took over Crimea and had their own elections, talking to the students, how does that affect you? That's way over. In Ukraine's not near the United States, but we realize that as Russia's getting more bold and bigger and starting to take more land, that does end up directly affecting the world and the United States.
Does global warming come up a lot?
Yes, it does, because we see different things happening with the ocean levels rising and more flooding happening, more storms, and how it affects countries that maybe don't have the output of fossil fuels that are causing some of the global warming issues.
There are multiple instances that Washington has been involved in. Ukraine, talk about Iraq, there's China. How do you link this to your general world news?
Yes, it's very important for us to talk about world news so that people can understand their world and how it affects them. We talked about in Ukraine with Crimea being taken over by Russia through an election that they ran, which many people in the world felt that was fraudulent. And we saw that Russia's taking more and more land. So these things are affecting the strength of Russia and how it affects the US and the rest of the world.
Does global warming come up a lot when you do this?
Yes, in stories right now in Venice, they're having more floods than they've had in 50 years. The ocean levels are rising from the global warming, and it's affecting many people with storms and flooding around the world. So that is a story that comes up a lot.
Let me read you some news headlines to see how you translate them to 6th graders. After one day of TV hearings, the impeachment battle lines remain the same. China's Commerce Ministry says that trade war should be ended by removing tariffs. How do you translate this into words that 6th graders can understand?
Well, usually stories get quite complex and quite lengthy, and most 6th graders may not be ready or interested in something too long. So I try to really abbreviate things. When we talk about the trade wars, just maybe talk about how that's going to create tensions between the US and China and create problems in the whole world. Maybe where there's so much trading that goes on between the US and China, it also affects the politics that they need to also get along because they don't want it to affect their economies. So we just try to get very brief and give simple facts about each of the stories.
There's a Democratic debate right now, every month. Just now, impeachment hearings are going to be live on TV. Do you encourage students to watch these, or do you have them go more to general news?
Well, I focus students always to look at all the stories going around in the world, and to really try to get involved and know how it affects them. Right now, there is a lot of news going on with the elections in our country, and it is important for students and everybody to be involved to know both sides of an issue. So I do encourage them to pay attention to the world, whether it's in the US or whether it is outside of the United States.
Do you give them background information before they watch this?
When it comes to the U.S. politics, a lot of time they just try to give simple ideas of both sides of a story, but let students make up their own decisions about things once they have some of the basic facts.
So, Mrs. Nado, this is one of the hardest questions in politics that even television hosts have trouble with. How do you remain politically neutral?
Oh, that can be difficult, but it's very important. You really want to give both sides for both parties, whether it's Democrats or Republicans. You want people to be able to make good decisions knowing both sides of an issue. So I think it's very important to stay neutral and try to make sure people can see things from both sides. And that would be the same on any issue in the world. You want to know the background and how both sides feel about a topic or an event. It makes us better at being able to understand, and makes us better even with our own opinion of it if we know where the other side is coming from.
Does this translate to being a good citizen?
It absolutely does. To be a good citizen and be involved in your country, you need to understand what is going on. So if you don't pay attention and learn about what the issues are going on in your country, and even the things that affect us from around the world that do directly affect our country, it makes everyone better citizens so they can get involved more, or even make the right decisions when it comes to electing their officials.
Israel is a specific topic with a lot of news that has circulated around this past 6 months. How do you talk to this about students without going too in depth?
Well, that's a perfect example, Jake, that you give when we talk about all the events in the world to get students interested in their world. In Israel, it's been going on for 60 years, since 1947, when the United Nations split the area of Palestine into both Jewish and Palestinian areas. And since that time, they've been fighting over land. So it's important when I explain to students, you need to understand how the Israeli feels and how the Palestinians feel. And in that way, they get a greater understanding of the situation and how those politics affect the United States and Washington. Because the United States takes the side of the Israelis, and that angers some of the other people in the area and around the world that take the Palestinian viewpoint. So it's really important to understand what's going on in other places in the world and how it affects us right back at home here in the United States.
Thank you, Mrs. Nado.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking, Jacob.